And right now, welcome back to the Steele Report, and I want to welcome back to the program KWWL political analyst Dr. Chris Larimer, professor of political science at the University of Northern Iowa, and he will be with us on Caucus night, of course. And now, Chris, can you believe it? We're only 8 days away as this program airs on Sunday morning on the main channel and on our sub-channels, and also have it on KWWL.com and also on our social media platforms. All of our programs are there. So 8 days out, and Democrats are already talking about a record turnout of people going to the 1,681 precincts, I think, across Iowa, which is a pretty monumental task. But what you're thinking about that? Look like it?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot of enthusiasm within the party. You know, you think back, their record year was 2008 when they had about 239,000 people show up at the Democratic caucuses. You know, anywhere from 80 to 90,000, I think, are the estimates as far as new caucus goers that year.
Wow.
So I think if they get over 200,000, that would be impressive. Certainly if they get up to the 2008 level, that would be, you know, even more impressive. I don't know if they're at that point yet, but you know, everything I've heard is that they're looking to at least exceed the 200,000 person mark.
Now that's going to be really something. And then, of course, this year something new, satellite precincts. There are like 97, I think, 99 new satellite locations. It'll be interesting to see if that's a factor, you know.
Yeah, I think so. And just to see how that works into the caucus math, I think that's one of the new things, you know, I'm going to be watching. Also just watching, you know, this year the rules changes about more transparency. So releasing the numbers on preference groups, that initial preference group formation. And you know, now that the rule changes on, I believe, you know, you have to, once you're in a preference group and that group is viable, I think the new rule is that you're not supposed to change preference groups. And so all those numbers are going to be really interesting. I think they're going to be really very revealing about candidate strength, but also the organization of a candidate. Because in the past, you know, you could have it where, you know, you had different numbered preference groups, but they would end up with the same number of delegates at the end of the night. This, I think that first number is going to be really interesting to watch.
And I think actually uncommitted can be its own preference group if it's viable at 15%.
I believe that's still the case.
And that's significant because those people then cannot realign with the different candidates. So when you talk about realignment, so the Republicans actually have a vote. You know, you're going to cast a ballot at the Republican caucus. Obviously, the president is in power, so that's really not a factor this year, just getting delegates for the county conventions onto the state and then onto the national convention. But for the Democrats, you got to have a precinct captain who's strong and someone who's persuasive, and kind of tell people how that works, you know.
Yeah, you do have to have someone that's strong. And you, as you said, you know, over 1,600 precincts across the state. You know, the candidates that have done well in the past have had a precinct captain in all those precincts.
Wow.
You know, you'd also want to, if you're a candidate, you want to have a county chair in each one of the 99 counties. But really at the precinct level, given the complexity of the rules, you want someone there who absolutely knows the rules, can kind of help direct people into the preference group, the importance of staying within that preference group, and really committing to that candidate. But you're absolutely right, the precinct captain is, you know, at the end of the night, that's the person who's going to really kind of help decide the fate of the candidate.
So I want to kind of put you on the spot here a little bit. We're still 8 days out, but viability is going to be extremely important for some of the other candidates like Tom Steyer, who has spent an incredible amount of money in ads, and Amy Klobuchar, who has literally flooded the ads on television and also on social media. What are their chances of being viable?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think, you know, again, that's going to get to the strength of their organization, you know, the extent to which they, as I said, they have county chairs in all 99 counties and they have precinct captains in all 1,600 plus precincts. I think, you know, for someone like Senator Klobuchar, she's been interesting to watch, you know, these last few weeks. I keep thinking back to, you know, the 2012 caucuses where Rick Santorum was ultimately declared the winner. It wasn't until the last 2 days of polling where he showed up as the leader in the polls, and it ended up on the recount winning the caucuses. You know, I don't know if Senator Klobuchar is there yet, but is it going to be that really last minute, very late surge where she is viable in all those precincts and really makes a big push to get in the top 4? But for her campaign, as you said, the viability rule is incredibly important for her, because if she doesn't do well in Iowa, then it's probably over after caucus night.
Yeah, 3 tickets out of Iowa normally. John McCain made it 4 tickets, so Amy Klobuchar is one of those. And she's got like Liz Mathis and Rob Hogue, those 2 state senators, endorsing her. The New York Times came out with a kind of an unusual endorsement of 2 candidates, Senator Warren and Senator Klobuchar.
I think if Senator Klobuchar would break into that top 4 and one of those top 4 candidates would fall, I think that's that's the story on caucus night, because as you know, it's always about expectations. You don't have to win the caucuses, you just have to beat the expectations, and that's the story going into the next day. You can think all the way back to the 1988 caucuses, where it was about how Pat Robertson finished ahead of a sitting vice president on caucus night. And Bob Dole won the caucuses in '88, but the story was all about Pat Robertson, so he didn't get the credit. So I think for Senator Klobuchar, it really is trying to finish better than expected and be part of the storyline coming out of the caucuses.
Yeah, going back to, you're talking about '88, that was Dole 37%, Robertson 24%, and then the former eventual president, George H.W. Bush, finished third that year. That was a shock. And then going back to Santorum, Mitt Romney was the declared winner that night, but then they went back and recounted, and some of the precincts weren't in, and Santorum ended up winning by about just a few votes, right?
Yeah, I think Santorum ended up winning by 34 votes, but on caucus night it was declared that Mitt Romney won by 8 votes. But of course, and so then they did the recount. But of course, at that point, once the recount was over, New Hampshire already happened. He didn't get the boost that he might normally get out of the Iowa caucuses.
Yeah, because it took over several days for that to come back, and by that time, New Hampshire was come and gone, so to speak. So the Senate impeachment trial continues. So the 3 candidates who are senators, they've not been able to come to Iowa, and who does that help then?
Well, I mean, you would think it would help the people who are here on the ground in Iowa with Vice President Biden, with Pete Buttigieg, and that they would be the candidates that would be able to make that push with Senator Warren, Senator Sanders, Senator Klobuchar in Washington, D.C. That, in Iowa we always talk about the personal side of politics, and that's, especially true with the Iowa caucuses. And so if Iowa voters are still looking to make that decision, right, and the last Des Moines Register Iowa poll that we had, it said that, about 45% of caucus goers could still be persuaded, or were still open, 13% could still be persuaded. So with those numbers that high, if they're still looking for a candidate, maybe they'll go with one of the candidates who's actually here.
That's right. Okay, we're going to take a short break, come back to talk more with KWWL political analyst Dr. Chris Larimer of UNI. Stay with us in just a moment. And welcome back to this week's edition of the Steele Report with Dr. Chris Larimer, our KWWL political analyst from the University of Northern Iowa. And by the way, he will be with us on set during our newscasts on caucus night on February 3rd. With the Senate impeachment trial, Chris, going on right now, Joe Biden's name has come up a lot already. Does that help or hurt him, do you think, in this caucus situation?
Well, it's hard to know. I think on at least the Biden controversy that is at the heart of lots of what's going on with the impeachment process, I think my guess, if I had a guess at this point, is that most people have probably made up their mind about it, whether or not he's guilty or not guilty, or if there was any sort of corruption going on. So I don't know if it necessarily hurts him. I think what helps him, again, is that he can be on the ground in the state of Iowa, and we've seen him in Iowa as frequently as he can be, because he's looking to do well in Iowa, certainly try to do well in New Hampshire, although Bernie Sanders is, right now, if you look at the average of polls, Bernie's leading, Senator Sanders is leading in New Hampshire, but then Vice President Biden is leading in Nevada, South Carolina, and the states after that. So I think, for him just to be here in Iowa can help try to offset any losses that might come out of the impeachment.
So Senator Sanders had a couple of things go against him the last few days. The incident, and the mic was on when Senator Warren walked up and said, "I think you called me a liar on national television." She probably knew that mic was on. Who knows how that works out. And then Hillary Clinton came out in her book and said nobody likes Bernie Sanders. And that was, I think that shocked a lot of people too, for her to go public like that. So how does that play into, we don't really know until caucus night, but how does it play, do you think?
Well, it is hard to know, because Senator Sanders, was an independent senator from Vermont, caucuses with the Democrats. So the extent to which he's, a longtime loyal member of the Democratic Party, people have always kind of questioned a little bit. And he represents, obviously, a more liberal wing of the Democratic Party. But again, I think, a lot of people are kind of, if they've settled on Bernie Sanders, they're probably there. I think for him, he's, again, looking to do well in Iowa, and then probably trying to win in New Hampshire.
He does attract large crowds in Iowa. He's a good, I mean, this is all about ground-based, politics, retail politics, I guess they call it here in Iowa, and he's done very well. When they bring up the word socialism, though, what does that mean to you as far as a campaign?
Well, I think there's a concern there that it's sort of an extreme version of liberalism that it's going to turn off a lot of independent or moderate voters when they hear the term socialism. So that's always a concern, I think, for Senator Sanders' campaign.
If you look at the history of the Iowa caucuses, only one Republican caucus winner has gone on to win the White House. 7 of 10 Democrats won the caucus and the nomination, but only 2 won the presidency. So does that hurt or help Iowa's status, do you think, as first in the nation?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And if you look at the support a candidate receives in Iowa on the Democratic side, and you use that as a predictor of how well they're going to do in New Hampshire, for the Democratic caucuses, that's a much better predictor of what's going to happen in New Hampshire. And so I think for the Iowa caucuses, it looks better because, as you've said, on the Republican side, if you plot the same data points, it's not as good of a predictor. And a lot of that goes to the last few caucus cycles where there's been the emergence of the social conservative vote and the social conservative candidate in Iowa doing well, like a Ted Cruz or a Rick Santorum or a Mike Huckabee, those last 3 cycles. And so I think, if it matches up for that the candidate does well in Iowa, does well in New Hampshire, goes on to be the nominee, then I think that bodes well for Iowa. But again, there's always this concern that this is going to be the last caucus cycle. And I think that concern is heightened even more this year over the arguments about transparency with the Iowa caucuses and what the Iowa Democratic Party has tried to do to change the rules to make it more transparent.
Well, we certainly hope that you will turn out to your caucus, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And Chris, you have to be 18 by election day to turn out, and you'll have to register if you're not registered as a Republican or Democrat. The caucus you go to, you have to register with that party, but you can do it the night of, right?
That's right, absolutely. Yep.
You won't be able to caucus. You'll be with us at night.
That's right. I'll be with you.
Okay. Well, it should be very exciting. I mean, caucuses in Iowa brings a lot of economic value to the state of Iowa, brings a lot of national attention, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Mostly good, I think.
I think so.
And the candidates, I wish they'd be really honest and say, I love being here in Iowa, or I can't wait till it's over. I don't know how that would go. But all right, Chris Larimer from the University of Northern Iowa. Dr. Larimer is the KWWL political analyst from the Political Science Department at UNI. Thanks, Chris, as always.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll get you back here next week, too, on the day before caucuses. We can get you back in, too.
Love to.
All right. Thanks for watching. We're also online on KWWL.com.